Today we're going to look at 5 questions to help you test whether you are in your ego. In the past, I personally became almost completely consumed by my ego to the point where I nearly lost myself, my belongings, and those I loved. Today, I can confidently say I've conquered that demon and I'm very happy being the real me. So let's dig a little deeper to see what we uncover. Keep watching. The following series of 5 questions are designed to poke and prod the ego in order to see whether you stay you or you align with the egoic response. This exercise will provide insight into how frequently or quickly you become prone to listening to the ego so that you are positioned to make any adjustments which may be in order. As you hear each question posed, be sure to observe yourself internally for any reactions that may surface. This is where the ego will be found. Ready? Number 5. When someone offers an opinion that differs from your own, do you tend to argue with the other party, or do you listen and attempt to understand their perspective? The ego desperately needs to be right in order to feed its false sense of self. It can't just be or be happy. It needs sustenance in order to reinforce itself because of the fact that it's illusory in nature. So the ego would have us argue in order to feel right, in air quotes, or superior, when the truth is we can feel just fine internally without the need to control the way another person perceives something or announce ourselves as superior. Number 4. When someone says something upsetting, do you take offense or do you let it go? It's the ego that goads us into the idea of righteous indignation. Ask yourself, what is the reason you take offense as your mental process? When we employ this mental strategy, what was said does not change for the better. And in truth, the one thing that does change is we come out of the situation feeling even worse than before. Number 3. When faced with 2 opposing viewpoints, do you pick a side or do you allow the truth to speak for itself? The ego thrives on having a perceived enemy, giving it a constant source of sustenance and inflating its self-worth in the process. Ask yourself, what is the reason you choose sides as opposed to aligning with the truth? Why would we embrace a mental stratagem that would have us pick option A or option B as opposed to aligning with what's true? Do we need to pick a side, or do we need to simply speak the truth? Number 2, do you tell yourself that circumstances must be a certain way in order to be happy, or do you project happiness as your internal state regardless of external conditions? The ego, in essence, is a story. It needs a dramatic, compelling narrative to share with the other egos it comes into contact with. So the more we suffer, the greater the ego's sense of self-importance becomes. We can see this in people that we call complainers, the negative Nancy in your social group, or the Debbie Downer at your workplace. The next time your ego tells you to be unhappy, try not listening to it and see what happens. And finally, number 1, do you assume what you see on television or hear on the radio is true, or do you do your own research in search of the truth? And as a follow-up question, did this question in particular agitate your ego? This final question may have struck a chord in you as you read it, which of course was the intent. So examining this query via introspection, meaning looking within yourself for answers and clarity, Ask yourself, what is the reason we assume something is true without checking for ourselves? What is the reason, for the most part, we go along with what we see and hear on screens? And finally, what's the reason your ego is putting up such a fight and doesn't want you to look? As you reflected upon each of these questions, did you see the ego surface at any point? Did you align with the thoughts and perspective it offered, or did you attempt to remain in truth? Have you gained any insights about yourself through this exercise, or learned anything new? Please add your comments below in this regard. And to bring things to a conclusion, know that you are not your ego. The ego is the false self. You are consciousness. Get to know yourself better, and you will come to know this as true. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.